And in today's video, I'm gonna show you the updated version of how I edit my Instagram pictures. I already filmed this video like a year and a half ago, but I have changed my editing style since then, and I do get a lot of questions on what I use today and how I edit my Instagram pictures currently. I'm gonna take you through the entire editing process for my 3 styles of pictures, as well as all of the photography apps that I have, even the ones that I don't use that often, and kind of like what I use them for. So if you guys are interested in how I edit my Instagram pictures currently, just keep watching. So first, I'm gonna start off with every single one of my photo editing apps that I have on my phone, and the first one is Diptic. And I've talked about this app before. It's just an app where you can make collages. So if you go on my Instagram and you see all of these pictures that I have, one picture side by side with another, or one on top of another, any kind of collage like this, I just use Diptic, and Diptic has like an endless possibility of collages. Next, I have an app called Image Blender, and all this app does is blend 2 images together, and I don't really use this app anymore, but this would be really helpful if you guys want to blend 2 images together. And next, I have an app that I used to use a lot, but now I don't really find myself using that often, but it is VSCO or VSCO Cam, and this app has so many beautiful filters. When I used to use it, or whenever I do use it very occasionally, I use A6 and I just bring it down quite a bit. But honestly, nowadays I only really use like Snapseed and Darkroom to do the majority of my editing on pictures. I don't really like my pictures to look too filtered anymore. So I still really recommend this app, and I'll probably end up using it again eventually, but for right now, I'm not using it as much as I used to. Moving on, I have my go-to, my favorite app, the app that I've been using. Even when I used to use VSCO Cam a lot, I still did my first batch of editing with this app. It has so many tools, which I'm gonna get into when I get to the editing portion of this video, but definitely 110% recommend this app for any kind of photo editing on your phone. It's literally like Photoshop for your phone. Moving on, I have an app called UNUM or UNUM, and this app is excellent for planning your feed. If there's one tip that I can give you guys for keeping a cohesive looking feed, it is to plan ahead. And this app lets you just move pictures around and see how pictures are going to look next to each other, and it's just so great for seeing if the picture that you just finished editing is going to blend in with your feed. You're gonna see that I go back and forth with pictures that I'm editing, and I import it into UNUM and I see how it's gonna look, and then I tweak little things to make it match with my feed perfectly. Next, I have an app called Retouch, and my favorite thing to do with this app is remove certain things from the background that my healing tool from Snapseed doesn't really do a good job at removing. Sometimes the healing tool is great, and sometimes the healing tool cannot really remove certain things from the background very well. So for instance, in this picture, I just get the brush, the object removal brush, and I remove the outlet from the wall, and it looks very seamless, very clean, and it doesn't really look like I edited my picture too much. I also really love the cloning tool in this app. So for instance, if you have a pattern or like a brick wall and you still want to remove something from that brick wall, the cloning tool is great because it allows you to clone a certain piece of the wall and just cover up whatever it is that you do not want in the picture. Next, I have Facetune, and what I mostly like to use Facetune for is to remove wrinkles from my clothes and like wrinkles from my couch. I do that pretty often, and I also really love their picker tool, which I'm going to show you how I use that in just a moment. But first, I'm going to go in and smooth out some of the wrinkles from my shirt. And the key to Facetune is to not go overboard. There are so many people who just go ham with this smoothing tool, and it can look very fake. So I just think that using a little bit of it is more than enough. So I kind of just look at it, and then I zoom back in and I use the eraser tool to bring in any detail that I may have smoothed out by mistake. But yeah, if you don't want to go overboard, you can just tap instead of just swiping on your screen. And now I have a little scar on my hand, which normally I don't really care about, but just for the sake of showing you, you can use the patch tool to patch any little blemish that you may have, or scar, or just anything that you do not want in your picture. So another tool that I really love to use from Facetune is their picker tool. So all this does is let you pick any color within the picture, and then it makes a brush with that color. So you put picker and then you pick whatever color you want, and then you click brush and it makes a brush for you. And for this picture I just picked the darker color from the background, and I'm just brushing it out to kind of make the background a little darker and make me be more of a focus. So I kind of did a sloppy job here, but you guys can see the before and the after. I think it looks a little bit better than it did before. You also have a detail brush, which you can just bring out details in your picture. I personally don't really use it that much because I think that it looks a little harsh, but it is really good for like jewelry or anything that you want to bring out in your picture. Next, I have an app called Phonto, and I mostly use this app for quotes because it has a lot of different fonts in it. If you guys go on my Instagram, you'll see that every now and then I post quotes on my feed, so I use Phonto for that. But I also have another different type of picture that I use Phonto for, which is this one right here, which I'll get into exactly how I edit it at the end of this video. This is one of the 3 styles of pictures that I throw into my feed. Next, I have an app called Enlight, which is another app that I've been using very frequently lately. And what I love about this app is the ability to target specific things in the picture, and it allows me to alter the hue of whatever I targeted in the picture. Snapseed has a tool similar to this one called Selective, but you cannot mess around with the hue of whatever area you selected. Here you can, you have the ability to change the hue of whatever it is that you targeted in the picture. So a lot of times I take pictures of a lot of wood. If you guys go on my Instagram, you'll see that I have a lot of wood in my house, and sometimes the wood can either come out too greenish or yellow or too reddish or pinkish. So I use this tool to neutralize the wood and just make it a normal color, kind of. You guys are gonna see what I mean. So I go to image and then I click target, and it gives me like this red area that I can just highlight anything in the picture, and I can either move it up or down so that it captures or clings on to exactly what it is that I want to change. And in this case it's my nightstand. And then I just click on tone and it gives me several options. It gives me exposure, contrast, saturation, and hue. And normally for this app, I alter the hue, and I usually bring the hue up to like 2 or 3. And I know it doesn't really make much of a difference, but to keep the cohesiveness of all of the wood within my feed, I find that this actually really helps. And I don't just use it for wood, I use it for anything within my picture, because sometimes you don't want to alter the entire like white balance or tint or hue. It's all kind of the same thing. You don't want to change the entire hue of the entire picture. You just want to target specific things. So this app is very helpful for that. It also has a ton of other tools, but this is what I mostly use it for. Next, I have another one of my favorite apps, and it is Darkroom. I use Snapseed and Darkroom every single time I edit a picture for my Instagram. And what I mostly use this app for is for specific colors, like to cancel out specific colors that I don't want within my pictures. I had already edited this picture, so I had moved the colors around, but it basically gives you all of the colors that you may find in the picture, and you can alter the hue, saturation, and luminance. Obviously you can't target specific things in the picture like I just did with Enlight, but this is more for like everything within the picture that contains this color. So what I like to do is lower the saturation of basically every color besides orange and yellow, and I only lower the reds a tiny little bit when I have a lot of wood in my picture. But I'm gonna get into exactly how I use this app when I get to the editing portion of this video, so stay tuned till the end of this video for that. Next, I have an app called Pixel Picker, and I've talked about this app before. I don't know how useful this app will be to the average person, but I personally do a lot of work on Photoshop, and I love this app for picking specific colors from a picture. If you guys are familiar with Photoshop, you would know that there are like red, blue, and green like coordinates or numbers to each color, and there's also like a color code for each specific color. So whenever you want to do a project, and let's say you want a specific color as your background and you saw a color that you really loved, like in a picture or something, this app is perfect for that. You just zoom into whatever picture and target any pixel, and it'll give you the color code of that specific color. So again, I don't know how useful this may be to the average person, but I personally find it really, really helpful. Moving on, I have an app called Mextures, and this app is really good for adding overlays to your pictures. So something that I was doing a little while ago to get a more vintage vibe in my pictures was adding like dust or like little grains to my picture to make it look older than what it actually is. And another app that I really love for that is Afterlight, but this one gives a more like realistic dust to your pictures, in my opinion. It's more subtle, and I don't know, I really like it. I don't really use it that much anymore, but I know that a lot of people are very into like adding these little dusty filters to their pictures, so I think that this is another very, very good option. Then of course I have Afterlight, which I also really, really love to add the little dusty filter to my pictures. I don't really do this, again, I don't really do the whole dusty thing that much anymore, but yeah, if you're going for a like vintage film kind of looking vibe in your pictures, I definitely recommend these little filters. So I really love 1 and 2, and number 4 also gives like a very warm feel to your picture. And pretty much all of these are good. You just want to lower them a bit so it's not as harsh in your picture. Okay, the more subtle your filters are, the better, guys. I can't stress that enough. Then I just have my GoPro app and my Zion Crane app, which is my gimbal app. And then finally I have an app called Camera Bag, which is just an app where you can get a bunch of different borders, and I love this one right here, which is just like a film inspired little border. I get so many questions every time that I post a picture with this border. So this is the app that I use to get borders like this, and they have a couple of different options which I'll get into in just a moment. So I'm finally going to talk about how I edit the 3 different styles of pictures on my feed. So if you go on my Instagram, you'll notice that I post a variety of like 3 different types of pictures. The first one is just pictures like this, which are predominantly like brown or beige toned with like whites and stuff. That's like the main kind of editing style that I use. And I also post black and white pictures, and for black and white pictures I obviously have a different method of editing. It's much simpler, so I'm gonna cover how I edit these pictures as well, including the border. And then finally, the last kind of editing style that I have is using the app called Phonto, which is something like this, which is a little bit more creative, and I don't use it that often, but I'm still gonna show you guys how I achieve something like this. So yeah, let's jump right into it. So the first app that I use is Snapseed, and before we get into the editing, I just want to make sure that I get the point across first that editing can only do so much. You have to make sure that you start with a pretty good image to begin with. So if you want the picture to match your feed, make sure that it has a color that matches your feed. I mostly shoot a lot of browns, a lot of beiges. I try to incorporate things that kind of go with my feed. Obviously you don't have to do that, but that's just one of the main things that I do to keep a cohesive feed. And secondly, if I'm going for just a regular picture, I'm not really playing with light or doing like flash photography, make sure that the picture is well lit. It is much easier to edit a picture that is well lit than one that is either like underexposed or overexposed. Just make sure that your lighting is right before you get into editing. So I just open up the Tune Image tool and it gives me all of these different options that I can tweak. And I usually always start off by hiring the brightness. Of course, every picture is going to be different, but for this one, I feel like the brightness needs to be higher. And then I go ahead and lower the contrast. I do this in every single picture. I always prefer a less contrasted picture. I'm not going to touch the saturation for right now. Ambient I always higher because I feel like it brings out more detail and it like brightens the shadows. I like it more than the shadow tool for some reason. I don't know why. For highlights, I'm going to bring it up a bit for this picture, and it's just going to brighten up all of the whites a tiny bit. For shadows, I'm also going to tweak it because for this picture, I feel like the nightstand and the floor were a little bit too dark. And then for warmth, I almost always bring it up a lot more than I normally would because now I'm going to take this into Darkroom and I'm going to desaturate a lot of colors. So I always like to start off with a very warm picture to begin with. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I go back and just tweak anything and make sure that the first little batch of editing is decent. And then I'm going to go in and save it and I modify original. I feel like this retains the most quality. So now we go into Darkroom, we press the little triple circle thing, and this is going to bring up all of the different colors. And I like to desaturate every color besides like the first three. So for blues, for the turquoise, I like to lower the saturation all the way. For the royal blue, lately I haven't really been lowering it all the way. Purple I lower all the way, and magenta I lower all the way. And I just touch the saturation, not any of the other things. I felt like the nightstand was a little bit reddish, so I'm lowering the saturation of the red a little bit just so that the nightstand doesn't pop out as much. And then I don't touch the orange or the yellow, and I save the picture. So now I bring it into UNUM and I check to see if it matches my feed. So right now I feel like the picture's looking a little dark and I feel like it has to be a tiny bit warmer. So I'm going to bring it back into Snapseed, and at this point, this is all I'm going to do. I'm just going to bring it back and forth from Snapseed into UNUM and make sure that it matches my feed. So the lower right side is a little dark, so I'm getting the selective tool and I'm just brightening that area, and you can see the before and the after right here. So I think that looks pretty good, and I feel like the overall picture is a tiny bit greenish. So I'm going to go into white balance and into tint, and I'm going to bring up the tint just a little bit. Sometimes when I feel like I need to bring out the warmth or bring up the temperature on something in my picture, I like to use the brush tool, and then I go into temperature and I go to +5 and I start brushing over the areas that I feel like need to be a little warmer. In this case, it's my straw bag, and this just really helps things pop, I've noticed. So yeah, I think that looks pretty good. So this is the before and after. I'm just gonna save this, and then I'm gonna go back into UNUM and I'm gonna see how it looks on my feed. So I think it looks pretty good, but I think that the saturation needs to be lowered a tiny little bit. And this is just me being nitpicky. I really wanted to show you guys my actual process. I go back and forth a lot. So yeah, I think that I need to lower the saturation a bit. So I'm gonna take it back into Snapseed. And I love how in Snapseed you have the ability to just see the edits that you have on that picture. So you can go to view edits, and then you can go down to your previous tuned image that you tweaked, and you can just lower the saturation from there. And now that I'm here, I think I'm going to lower the warmth to -1. as well. Yeah, that looks better. And then you just have to remember to go all the way up. Snapseed kind of works like Photoshop where it has layers, so you want to make sure that you're saving all of the layers. So you have to go all the way up, back to brush, and then you save from there. So I take it back into UNUM, and finally I am happy with the way that it looks on my feed. So that's about it for this kind of picture. Now jumping into my black and white pictures that look like this. And to get them side by side, I already told you guys I use Diptic. So I'm just going to show you how I get the black and white picture and the border. So if you want to make a side by side collage, you can just use any collage app for that. So I go back into Snapseed, and I love the black and white in Snapseed. You can alter the brightness, the contrast, and the grain, and it gives you a very subtle black and white. I don't like black and whites that are too dark or too contrasty. So I higher the brightness a bit, I lower the contrast, and I higher the grain. And then I save and I modify the original. And then I go into Camera Bag. And Camera Bag has several options. My favorite one is Infinity 50, but it also has this one right here, which is the 47mm square. But since I like portrait mode, like rectangular pictures, I just stick to Infinity 50, and it gives you a picture just like this. And that is about it for my black and white pictures. Again, you can go into Diptic and choose the side by side, and you can get both of the pictures side by side. You just have to bring both of the pictures into Camera Bag, make sure that they both have borders, and then just put them side by side. So the last picture that I have is this one right here, and I use Phonto to do all of these edits. So I'm gonna use the same black and white picture that I just edited for this video. In Phonto, I'm gonna click the little camera on the bottom, and I'm gonna choose plain image, and then I'm gonna click on the little white square, and on the bottom I'm gonna click on color. And you can pick whatever color. You can customize a color. You can use the pixel picker app that I showed you and just pick a color of any picture that you like, and it'll give you the red, blue, and green numbers. But I already have a color saved, so I just pick like these 4 little lines, and it brings up my saved colors, and then I click apply. So once I get here, I'm gonna click the top right corner, and then I'm gonna click use. And then I'm gonna go into the bottom left corner menu, and I'm gonna click add image. So we're gonna bring in the black and white image that I just finished editing, and you can move the picture around freehand, or you can just tap on it once and click move, and click both of the little A's that show up, and that centers your picture perfectly. You can adjust the size or the width and the height of the picture. I just adjust the size and make it a little bigger. And then we're gonna go back into the bottom left hand menu, and we're gonna click on add item this time. So that's gonna bring up a little like graphics menu, and I like to click on the square that has no fill, and this is gonna bring up a square. You can change the colors if you want. You just tap on it once, and you're gonna get a similar menu that you got to the picture, and you can change the size. You can adjust the width and the height to make it however you want. Another thing that I like to do is adjust the stroke so that the box is not too thick, but again, this is all personal preference. You guys can just play around with it, get creative. You can do a bunch of different things on this app, but this is just what I normally do to get this kind of picture. So yeah, this is pretty much it for the 3 different styles of pictures on my Instagram. I hope that you guys like this video. I know that it's a very, very long one, but since I get so many questions on this topic, I just wanted the video to be as informative and in-depth as possible. So yeah, that is everything for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell down below. I would really, really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.